Welcome to Pioneer, the podcast series for serious innovators, brought to you by Wrays. Here, we talk to innovative entrepreneurs, CEOs, scientists and policymakers about innovation.
My name's Frank Hurley, and it is my pleasure to introduce Jonathon Wolfe. Jonathon has worked for 25 years in industry as the CEO of startup and fast growth businesses. He has led 6 startups in various high-tech ventures, from hearing aids to vet science to video gaming. He applies this experience and his general business expertise in a variety of consulting roles and a number of new ventures. He is responsible for developing the strategy and direction of many organisations. He works with business who want to be proactive in the face of disruption and brings a strong focus on commercial outcomes. Jonathon also leads Wrays Solutions. Wrays Solutions help business innovators from startup to growth through to exit. Hello, Jonathon. Thank you for coming in today. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Frank. It's a pleasure to be here.
Jonathon, you've been in the innovation space for a few cycles now. What's different this time?
Well, I think there are 2 fundamental differences that I see at the moment, Frank. One is the environment that's been created by the government's National Innovation Science Agenda, in that the government appears to have the intention, and it is early days, but their agenda sets out a number of platforms and programs that businesses interested in innovating can get involved in, and that's from encouraging collaboration with universities, funding a much more responsive grant program, and providing actual support on the ground in terms of people and resources. So that previously, when I've seen that before, the government has sort of rolled out a one-size-fits-all thing. This time it seems to be actually an environment where you can tailor the assistance you want, they want to listen to you, and it's much more of a negotiation and a discussion about what sort of things you want. And, I was talking to one of the guys who works in accelerating commercialisation recently, and he said it's a very, very competitive environment to get hold of this government money, which I think is a good thing. You actually should have it as a high benchmark to get government money. And, I've always had the view that corporates should, if you can get government money, that's good, but if your project is strong enough, it should go ahead anyway. It should stand on its own. It shouldn't be reliant on getting a grant. And I think they're bringing much more of that commercial acumen to it. The other thing that I see is a conversation around digital disruption. And I think that in every business that I'm talking to and every business that I'm looking at, they're subject to some level of disruption from the digital economy. Can I deliver my services in a more efficient way? Can I deliver it faster? Can I have more global reach? So the conversation is not geographically constrained anymore. It's talking about how can I build a global business? How can I be involved in dealing with the complexities of global business, taking money in a different currency, all of those issues. So it's quite a different conversation, and there's no business that's immune to the digital disruption. So I think that's probably new as well. It's right across every industry. It's not constrained to a services industry. Every industry can find a way, and many of the businesses I'm involved with are actually solving some of those fundamental problems.
That's interesting. I hear from your tone that you seem optimistic, but Australia's been down this path before. We had the knowledge country back in the 90s, which never quite got anywhere, and we've done other things. You're sounding optimistic. You think there's rubber on the road, or we're still waiting to see that?
Well, it's as I say, green shoots. I think there is enough to suggest that the momentum is going to build. I think politically we're in that environment where the change of government could change everything. So I'm hesitant or cautious around those things. I think I've been looking at the defence industry, and there's certainly a lot of activity going on in that area as well. So I think it's optimistic. But also the cost of doing these things has gone down dramatically. You look at I was looking at something the other day about the life. How long what's the average life of the ASX top 100? And the graph basically goes from 10 years ago it was 15 years old. Today it's 5 years old.
Wow!
And that's a massive change, and that trajectory is going to continue.
So what are the fundamentals to good corporate innovation?
There's a couple of things that I do when I engage with any any corporate person around their innovation agenda. And firstly is, do they own the outcome? So are they responsible for the system, if you like? So in any innovation program, there's key executive sponsorship is the key piece that is always, sometimes CEOs push it out and give it to someone else to run. Whenever I see that, I know it's less likely to succeed. So if someone owns the system, they own the growth problem, or they own the problem in terms of the business outcomes. The innovation is then a way to get there. So I think it's a kind of one way of saying that you don't want innovation to be seen as a thing apart from the business. Our role, and much of what I do, is help them build innovation into their DNA and how they operate. So change being the current, change is the new normal is one way to think about it. But your customers are changing regularly. If you're not building that into your DNA, you're not doing well. But I suppose that then breaks down into how are you going to market, what market should you go after. And I have a lot of background in value chain analysis and value systems analysis, and we look at things like where you're interacting with a market, or you're interacting with the customers. Should you license that technology to them? Should you actually go down the product to build a product for them? They're rational decisions you can make, but many businesses say, well, I'm a business that makes products, so they always make products. It's not unusual to say, well, if you actually analysed how to make more money or better return on assets, you could actually license the technology to an outsourced manufacturer and then use your distribution chain to deliver it. So there are many ways that you can unpack what you do, look at where you actually have the sustainable expertise and concentrate on that, rather than saying, well, I've always done product development, so that's what I'm always going to do. So it's another way of sort of going back and saying the components to successful innovation are leadership is the first thing. If that's not there, you're going to struggle. But then you can say, well, the discipline of the process can be broken down and analysed and see where your core strengths are and collaborate. So
are you saying that innovation is a process? Because I think many people would think innovation is a crazy scientist in a lab.
Yeah, no, there are, we talk about big I and little I. So big I innovation is coming up with the crazy scientist at the bench, the cure for cancer, those sorts of things, the big ideas. Most businesses work in little I, which is incremental, continuous improvement, which is where it comes to the cultural aspects of how am I going to be better today? What am I going to do to improve my customer experience? How am I going to take waste out of what I do so I can deliver more margin or more return on assets and satisfy my customer in a better way? So big I, little I is a lot of what we talk about.
Yeah, it's a much broader definition of innovation then.
Absolutely. Innovation is a process and you can get better at it, which is the other thing. We can teach you to be better.
So what are your rules of thumb for successful corporate innovations?
Okay, I like to break it down into 4 broad categories of activity, which I like to see activity in all of those areas. The first one is, have you spoken to the customer? Do you understand the customer? Too many innovations get caught up in working behind closed doors to try and perfect it before it goes to market. Whereas I think what you need to do is iterate it with your customer. So you've got an idea, take it out to market, road test it as an idea, or is it just a bunch of whiteboard sessions with your customers? Actually really understand their needs. So I call that the path to market. The path to market is get out early, talk to, iterate, use the new technologies to build prototypes, 3D printing, whatever it is that you need to do. Build the experience up with the customer so you can deliver to their needs. And this is marketing 101, right? But it's traditionally not been done. Corporate R&D projects were done behind closed doors in the absence of the customer because they thought they knew what the customer needed.
Yeah, and people get a mindset of they must like it because I built it and I know it's good.
Yeah, so they get religion about it, right?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that we know from our work that we are well skilled in the art of registering and protecting your intellectual property before you go out, so you can have confidence that when you go and have those early discussions that we've built you a broad base of commercial activity that you can go and exploit as you narrow down and get closer to the customer. So you can set up your intellectual property position and then drive through that to the need for the customer by iterating it, so you're building a commercial platform. Path to product is the other one. Path to product is, okay, what am I building and how am I building it? Am I doing it in the most efficient way? Do I have the right partners? Do I have the right expertise? So many organisations these days are not a group of a large set of employees which are utilised all the time. It's a virtual organisation that collaborates around a problem. The engineers come and go, the scientists come and go, the marketers come and go. Your job is to program manage that and bring it together. So the path to product is a deliberate roadmap that you can follow.
I know from my own experience with technology, you can get the top of the range technology, but given that usually comes with a cost, the ROI on the project is lower, whereas you can get a lesser piece of technology, more ROI. You don't need that Rolls-Royce solution.
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about? It's knowing that you don't have to have the Rolls-Royce. What's the value?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably best understood in the software development processes where, people talk about agile development processes. Essentially what that is get the thing to a minimum viable product, throw it out there, iterate with your customer because they see value in what you're trying to do and enrich it as you build. So build the thing while you're flying is another way, which is another way of saying what you're doing. Don't gold plate it. Go out there with what you've now designed with your customers that adds value to their business. They'll put up with a little bit of edge, sort of scrappiness around the edges while you refine that product. And I think that approach, rather than designing it to the nth degree and then building it, and then the cycle times are too long. Someone will come and eat your lunch in the meantime. Yes.
Okay, so we've got pathway to customer, we've got pathway to product. Any other rules of thumb?
Pathway to liquidity. Path to liquidity is another one.
It's always good to be liquid.
Yeah. So that issue, of course, is, in early stage businesses, it's often about creating a proposition that's investable, so people will see where you're going and understand you have a clear direction, and so they'll invest in that for a financial return. In a corporate market, that's more about, how am I going to know that this is actually working in the market, and what are the financial indicators that are going to show me early that I'm on the right track? And you should be able to design your path to liquidity and know that I'm either getting support from my corporate parent, I'm getting early stage adopters from the market because I've segmented them and I've gone after them and I've got my ROI that I expect at that point. And as the market gets more comfortable with what we're doing and as we get more comfortable, we should be able to build that path to liquidity quite in a structured and reasonable way.
Because if you believe the literature and certainly anecdotal experience, most businesses fail from cash flow, not from sales.
Yes. Yeah. So understanding that, and that's exactly the point. What is the business environment that you're operating in? If you're growing a new line out of an existing business, that's dragging margin or dragging or cash away from growing the core business. Disruption theory says you're more likely to do that than not, but you can do that. And then the fourth one is the people. There's a school of thought that says the people are the most important to the business. I think that's changing a little bit in that if you have a good strategy and a good plan and you've thought through many of these issues, that you can get competent management to do it. Australia has sometimes a little bit of a paucity of competent management around, and that's one of the areas that means that consulting advice and support is always needed through that process, because there aren't a lot of people who've been through around the mill like me and others.
Interesting stuff. Thanks, Jonathan. We hear a lot about big data today. What role does that play in this process, this innovation process?
I think if you're not analysing large slabs of data and understanding what is going on, you think about the world today as we all experience it. Everyone's got a mobile phone. It's pretty easy with not a lot of expense to get access to how are people interacting with your industry, what sort of services are they buying at what times, who are they buying it from, how are they seeking information. This information is available to any business who wants to purchase it or to generate for themselves. But it is large amounts of data. We were doing some research the other day on the Google car. The statistics are that the Google car generates 5 gigabytes of information for every minute it drives. So that level of data is just take that and put it into your shopping market or your supermarket or into any retail context, or you put it into Amazon or those sorts of people. Netflix use big data to predict the video streaming quality based on usage patterns that from an hour ago. So big data has not only a real-time service implication for people, but it's actually as close to real-time as you can build. You can have a business that is reacting in real time to data that's being analysed on the fly. So there's big data techniques that can be used to deal with such massive amounts of data and make sense of it in time that business can react.
So is this a market research tool, or it's a kind of an operational ongoing tool?
No, it's an operational platform. One of our clients use their platform to determine the influences in social media in political domains. So the politicians know who's talking about their policies in a geographical location, so they can start to seed the conversation through Facebook or Twitter or the mainstream media or whatever. They can react in real time. So the shift is, I think, moving from analytics to real-time platforms that are interacting with your customer, which thousands of customers generate thousands of gigabytes of data. Meaningless stuff unless you've got the ability to analyse it and have the skills to analyse it in real time.
Okay. Fascinating. Who knows where this world's going?
Yeah, that's true.
What's your view on accelerators, and how do they help support innovation?
Well, I think I have two ideas about accelerators. I think many of them get caught up in their own business. They're not actually focused on the outcomes for their incubatees, if you like, because they invest in the real estate or the infrastructure of their own accelerator. So I think you need to be careful about who you partner with in the accelerator space, because their needs may be quite different from what you're looking for. If they're just renting you a seat, a bum on a seat and a Wi-Fi connection and a pool table, what else are you going to get out of it? What strategic advice? What other things are they bringing to the party?
So just for clarity, an accelerator is an incubator, or they're different things?
So an incubator is something, in my mind, an incubator is an idea that needs to be market tested or commercially tested, and that's done in a safe space. So you take an academic or a scientist or a mad inventor and you run them through a process of 90 days or 100 days to see whether that actually is a really commercial idea. An accelerator is one that says, well, I've got some small amount of traction, or I've built my prototype. I'm now trying to get to investor ready or actually get to market at scale. So it's another shift down the commercialization pathway.
Right, okay.
And so the incubator has, you see many universities setting up incubators or co-working spaces, and they provide a sort of, as it says, they kind of a place where you can test your ideas and incubate it and grow it into something a little bit. The embryo grows into something early stage, and the accelerator says, well, this actually has some traction. We're going to supercharge it and see if it will scale.
Move it up the life cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge there is not all businesses are global or should be accelerated. We were talking earlier today about some business just happy where they are, happy trundling along. They're not everyone needs to grow up to be.
Sometimes it's just a lifestyle.
Yeah, just what they want, and that's fine.
Yeah. But the trick is to know what you want
and what you want.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's my earlier one of my interests is the mindset of the owners or the business participants and how they think about their business, because so many businesses are invested so deeply, or people are invested in their business so deeply they don't separate them. Whereas I've always thought, well, business is about growing shareholder value for the shareholders. So if you take investment, that's another group of people, or it might be just you and your partner who own a business together. They shouldn't be seen as the same thing. They're quite separate, and they should be treated strategically, because you can step away from your business and be mum and dad at home thinking about your business rather than running it all day, every day, and being a slave to this thing that just generates enough income to live by.
So the innovation ecosystem has evolved in Australia. Where to now? What happens next?
Well, I think we need to have. There's two things happening. I think the environment of early stage funding is now set. We have a legislation in place, and we've already seen the emergence of the first or second $200 million funds in Australia. So venture capital is sort of back on the agenda as being a viable part of an investment portfolio. So the ecosystem and the sort of access to not only seed funding and sort of Series B funding, but follow-on funds. So typically the Australian environment didn't have enough capital in it to support those investments. They do now, so I think it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because we run the risk of having too much money chasing too few good deals, and so a bunch of those people will fall over. I think there are more people who have been through, kind of more like me, been through the cycle a couple of times, so there's more experience and expertise available to innovation projects, not only in the startup domain but in the corporate domain, where this idea of true collaboration, like partnering with Wrays through the commercialisation cycle, is probably not something that an entrepreneur might have considered before. But what we've been trying to do is position ourselves as a holistic partner for the commercial journey, and we can provide everything from commercial law to intellectual property to commercialisation advice. That's an attractive package, and those sorts of things. I think you'll see more of that ecosystem being aware of how best to support innovation. We don't and probably never will have a Silicon Valley type environment, which is one that's everyone takes a punt, takes a small amount of equity in the thing and runs it through, and you have 20 of them and one of them works off and that pays for the other 19, sort of thing. We don't have that environment here, but what we do have is more experience, and a more experience in terms of executives, a more global perspective, and also, as I said, this sort of growing and maturing funding base, which I think will those three things together will be important.
Yeah. So along with all of that, and we talked about digital disruption earlier, I mean, one of the other changes over the last decade and a half certainly is the global village. So now we have markets, we have global markets we can go to, we can get information a lot easier, quicker than we ever used to. The other side of that sword, however, is a lot more competitors. We're in a global competitive market now. Are you seeing anything in that space, or are entrepreneurs still working in their own little market?
I think there's more global orientation for your early stage or young business people. They're not just thinking about the Sydney or Australian market. They are actually thinking about how do I get into those international paths? How do I get into how would I get into the international trade or export market? We've got things like the Trade Pacific Partnership, the sort of bilateral agreements between Australia and other places, which make these things easier to do and carve out. You've got more entry points into these markets, and an increasingly global citizenry, is your point, really. There's not don't grow up in Australia and be completely unaware that there's a whole big wide world out there. Our kids and the digital natives, as they call them, have a sort of an orientation to the world rather quite different from ours. Yeah. And I think they're being, universities and schools are probably preparing them reasonably well, but there's more to do there. I think more global perspective, more proven international experience. In my career has been very much international. I've done business in Denmark and in the States and in Italy and in the UK and across America. So I have there's many people like me who have a perspective of international business is fun, and it's rewarding, and it's challenging, and that's what you want, right? You want to be challenged to be the best in the world. Well, you've got to get out in the world and do it. Yeah, and you've got to have fun on the way through. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, then why are you doing it? That's right. Yeah. No, it has to be it's not as much to say money is the byproduct of what you do, but it shouldn't be the sole focus of why you do it. Yeah. I have a long-held passion in the development of the innovation system in Australia, because when I got involved in it, there were very few people who'd been through the mill and had actually come back and then started to do it again and again and again. And I've done 7 or 8 different business initiatives, all with varying different types of funding, from bootstrapping to venture capital. And I did that because I wanted to learn about the different ways to run businesses and be involved in it. And it was fun, and it was hard, but it was also enjoyable because it was challenging.
Thanks, Jonathan. We've run out of time today. That's been really interesting. Thanks very much for coming in.
All right, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today in another of our Pioneer podcast series for serious innovators. Until then, I'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us today for the Wrays Innovator Series. If you would like to know more about today's topic, please email us wrays@wrays.com.au.